Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street, the Casper video CSPR. We made the promise that not only would we be adding the Casper token to our portfolio, but we'd also try and do regular videos. Apologies for the last few weeks of limited content. Trying to get back into the full swing of this now. So the last actual Casper video we did was around a month ago. It was very well received. Thank you very much for that. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel after you have watched this one, of course, and smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. But let's go into the full swing of this one. If you didn't see my YouTube shorts a couple of days ago, and note they are not shorts with the word YouTube on them. I'm talking about the actual shorts mini video platform on YouTube. This is very much around the topic of the blockchain hub at Davos 2023. CV, so Casper Labs are basically sponsoring this part of the event, part of the Davos aspect of Blockchain Hub. So Davos, for those that don't know, is a humongous event taking place annually at Davos by the World Economic Forum. Okay, so this is where a multitude of different kind of topics and discussions occur relating to healthcare, relating to sustainability, to climate change, anything and everything you possibly think of. The richest upon richest people are there. The people who are actually in power of the world are there, that then dictate to the governments and the presidents, etc., of how we are looking to proceed as humanity and technologically aspects as well into the future. Developing things like with the UN, for example, the Agenda 21, the Agenda 30 programs, of which we are currently in the latter stage of the latter one, Agenda 30, obviously leading up to 2030, now 2023, which is mental how fast these years are going. But yeah, for this one in particular, I'm really interested to see the developments that have occurred in blockchain in general, and the excitements towards adoption. We'll go on to that point in a second before we then loop into the Casper price point and stuff like that. But I wanted to reiterate something that Casper been doing recently as well, is the big awesome survey and report that they did in regards to adoption and where blockchain sits in the minds of everyone in the world right now and where it's come from. So the event itself is really cool. So you can go on Blockchain Hub here, so blockchainhubdavos.com. You can register. It says get tickets, but it's basically a free webinar if you haven't got an actual ticket to the physical thing. I think that's a special invite. I unfortunately think it won. Couldn't make it anyway. But this is very much around the ability to see the live stream. And I think this is massively important if you're an investor or a researcher or just have a general interest in this space that we're in of Web3 and blockchain. I'm a true believer and advocate of education. I think hopefully everyone out there isn't just investing, but actually also understanding this fourth industrial revolution that we're going into. So there's some fantastic speakers in here, a couple that stand out for me. I'm really looking forward to hearing from Daniela here, so Executive Director and General Manager of Blockchain and Identity at Hyperledger Foundation and Linux Foundation. So, but for those that don't know, Hyperledger Foundation is a massive organization. It's got things like Hyperledger Fabric with the likes of IBM and Microsoft are using, Accenture are using, kind of like off radar really, because we can't invest in Hyperledger Fabric, but it's still the principle that these guys are working at massive enterprise levels. So I'm really interested to see their developments. Hopefully they mention a few things from their side as to what they're achieving, but obviously their points about blockchain in general. Of course, you've got people associated with Bitcoin directly, Qualcomm, massive, humongous companies out there. So what I love about this version of Blockchain Hub is you've really got some massive integrations of what I would argue is like native companies, i.e. companies that have been around for a long time and are utilizing or about to utilize blockchain. And this is where I'm seeing the next 2 years going. The actual crossover event of, well, we're Web3 over here, we're Web2 / the original Oracle / the original internet. And what I love to see is the blend. People like Cisco here, Cisco Systems, and then you've got, like I said, the incorporation of a multitude of Web3 companies. Obviously, quite a few people from Casper, understandably, because they're sponsoring the thing. I don't know how much that would have cost, but wow, what a cool thing to have your name presented to any communications out there, relays back to Casper as well, which is really cool. So it is a big list here, guys. And obviously, blockchain is a huge topic in World Economic Forum over the last sort of 5-6 years in particular, and it's really heating up. Irrespective of the market downward trend and everything like that, that doesn't matter to me. The technology is coming. The technology is being integrated right now, and you can clearly see as clear as day all the huge companies that are already getting involved with this kind of thing. So check it out, guys. I think it's well worth just listening in, even if you can only speak or hear about a certain few parts of them. I think this is really super cool. So looking forward to this one and hearing a lot more information about that. But off the back of that, guys, this was mentioned in Cointelegraph. 90% of businesses are adopting blockchain technology. This is what basically is being suggested, and based off the back of a Casper Labs and Zogby Analytics survey that's been completed. Now, Cointelegraph don't really go into full detail, but I found this one on Yahoo Finance, which goes into a bit more strategic information about what this is actually about. But some really interesting points here. So the blockchain knowledge gap persists across both business leaders and developers, and that's totally true. I think like the last 10 years, for me personally, I'm open and honest about this. I had so many questions and things about life for many years, and I heard about blockchain, and I finally understood like how all this stuff's going to be integrated, how Agenda 30, all of this stuff is going to really be advanced, and blockchain was the big answer to this. So for me personally, I've only really been fully involved, for the last maybe 3 or 4 years. I've worked in Web3, I've worked in blockchain, and it's very interesting. It's very early and very immature in a lot of aspects. But from the outside now as well, in terms of like the YouTube channel and everything, I'm finding it more and more fascinating every week that comes. And what I'm really excited about to see is the adoption, proper mass adoption, both enterprise level and retail investors, or indeed retail users, or just general users of the public being incorporated in the next few years. 2025, we know the financial institution is changing the face of the world with the new RTGS system, the ISO 20022 compliance of standardization, the messaging service taking over the existing finance system, the incorporation of digital currencies, the incorporation of things like automation, EV cars, healthcare being more digital, everything. It's going to be so exciting. So this aspect here, more than half, 54% of respondents to the survey, that is, still see blockchain crypto as interchangeable terms, even though the former is just a single application. This one's quite interesting. The far majority, 98% of respondents, expressed they would be more likely to adopt blockchain if they learned more about the technology and understood how their peers were using it. This is a really big category of thought processing here, because education is huge. I love education and learning, and we've got to remember that these are two different worlds right now, Web3 and the origination of where companies and everything are, supply chain, logistics. Can you imagine going to any warehouse or something saying, oh, we've got this Web3 stuff? It'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? Oh, by the way, it can do smart contracts, it can do automatic deliveries and etc. Transactions for next to nothing. No worries about tax or inflation or anything like that anymore. It's mental, right? But there's still strong interest in the adoption of blockchain. Nearly 90% of businesses in the US, UK, and China are starting to use blockchain in some capacity. 87% are likely to invest in a blockchain solution in the next 12 months. So I'm not quite sure who their source or quantitative data is for this survey, but it's very intriguing. I know a lot of CEOs, particularly here in London, who are adopting or indeed already using blockchain technology. I know for sure one massive one is using Cardano. I speak to him quite regularly, and he's saying like Cardano's integration is absolutely fabulous at the moment, especially the smart contract aspect of it. Lots of people using Chainlink for the oracles, etc. Quant, similar principle. 81% expect technology budgets to increase in 2023. So we've got this recession. It's going to bounce back eventually, and these are the great times for companies to develop, blockchain companies to develop as well, and come out of this with a massive foundation of opportunity. Everything's been taken care of. The structuring, the slimlining of the companies. Now we're going to put in the technologies that are going to ensure that we're very efficient, speedy, cost efficient, all of these things. And blockchain is going to play a big part of that. Of course, we know Casper is going to have a huge area of this, and particularly, as it says, built the first layer 1 blockchain to scale the operational needs of business. This is huge because as adoption occurs and we get all those funny information packs and white papers of networks where they say like we can do X amount of transactions per second, but that's not real world because it's not even adopted yet. So how on earth are you going to know? When these networks are getting overwhelmed with users and utility, especially in enterprise and trade levels, you're going to need companies like Casper Labs on top of this to really scale this out and really build a lot more bandwidth into the system so that there's no clogging up time consumption of transactions, because otherwise we might as well stay on the existing systems that we got and just to deal with the fact that things take days or months sometimes for things to be confirmed, verified, etc. That's not what we want. And we know that these guys are way ahead with so many cool things. And we mentioned as well in the intro video about the ability to upgrade smart contracts. This is huge when we're talking about scalability and increasing that bandwidth. What I mean by that is increasing the network capability and making sure that, like when people go onto a server or so many people are on the internet in your work environment at one time, the internet goes bad, right? Because there's only so much of the internet or Wi-Fi capability to share around the office. It's that principle basically of expanding that within the remit of blockchain and the abilities to do so. So it's really interesting, and I'm really want to see this report in more detail. Hopefully I can get hold of it properly and we can go into that in a bit more detail. And I do have hopefully a scheduled AMA with these guys in the next month or two. We've been talking back and forth. Obviously big events for them at the moment, so it's totally understandable, but looking forward to developing that conversation further and bringing some more info to you guys as and when we can. So guys, that out of the way, some really cool stuff with Casper going on. Looking forward to seeing what they have to say at the Davos event, which I believe is next week now. Can't believe that. So come around so fast. Keep an eye out for that, guys. Do register. I'll leave in the description below. I'll leave a link to that for you guys to register for free as well. I don't get anything out of it. It's just I'm happy to share it and hopefully everyone learns something. Let's jump into the price action of Casper over the last couple of weeks. So right now, of course, the pricing floating around just above that 3 cent level. Now, remember the previous video we did, we were trying to capture some Casper tokens at these lower regions. There was a couple of opportunities for us to do so. And in general, the whole market has been taking a nice upward turn. What I'm quite intrigued about this is how far this goes, but in generally speaking, of all the assets I've been analysing over the last few days for my personal interests and investments, is that they're all sort of hitting a bit of a barrier, and it's very heavily related to previous markers of support and resistance that we've seen in the past, and that's no different here for Casper. In fact, as you can see on both the short-term levels and the macro levels, the proof is in the pudding. So this is what we drew in the last one, and actually if you look at this, the last 2 days, we tried to overstep this barrier. And what I'm referring to is this red marker here on the macro. I'm just going to zoom in a bit more for you guys and just pull that across so you have a bit more of an understanding of what I'm talking about. So we're playing around really with the marker of exactly where our valuation is right now, 3.2 cents, okay? It's at the moment struggling to push itself up to these next levels of 3.5 cents. So we're really talking about half a cent here. It's not huge, but it's still nice to see on the chart visually that is trying to approach and do something to get to those kind of areas to see if we can perhaps identify that as an option to look at support and resistance. But I think it's too early still right now, and we need to conclude what's going to happen in the next week or two. My anticipation is that we then drop back down to this other fib retracement level back down here at the exact on the nose 3 cent mark, and still continue to test even below that around these areas of 2.5 to 3 cent marks. I don't think this is an indicator to suggest we're out of the bear market and winter market yet. There's obviously some good talk around blockchain and crypto at the moment. There's just a bit of an upswing, a bit of an uptrend based on the movements of Bitcoin. It then incorporates valuations to be sold off and then put into some of the smaller cap or altcoin alternatives as well. I think Casper has a bit of a differentiation in the sense that it's got some really cool stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. The announcements over the last 2 days or 3 days about the survey and their integration with Davos has probably helped take this up a bit further as well. So there's loads of things you need to think about outside of a chart, like macro events, for example, as to why these price movements are going the way they are. It's not always just about the traders themselves. There's lots of different things and variables to think about. So my anticipation, guys, as I said, with the Casper bought at these lower regions, I'm not going to be selling at 3.5 cents. I'm not interested in selling Casper until a few years' time at least, when hopefully the price is phenomenally higher than where it is now. I mean, you could get some rough indications that even maybe in the next cycles, we could start pushing the barriers of that 10 to 15 cent mark. That's where these are kind of like quite good guidelines based on existing data of where these top mechanisms can be based on those kind of like functionalities. But what I want to see in the long term, of course, we saw the launch prices way up here above the dollar. I don't even know if that's true or not, but we could argue, let's just say, for example, the averaging out of around 40-50 cents. This is something that should really be starting to be achieved over the next couple of years, in my opinion. Yeah. So forget those like 10-15 cent marks. I think that's a good short term as the cycle improves over time. But we do want to start seeing some longevity in this. And in fact, disregarding those first steps, if I was to take these sort of like initial concept ideas, is that you could argue that in the future, over these next couple of years, we could see over the dollar mark. Let us know what you think about that in the comments below, because that is certainly something to think about in the future. In terms of sell-off points, if we're buying tokens here at these like 3-5 cent levels, wow, a dollar would be brilliant. But I'd like to think I'd have some more strategic positions in the lower regions, below a dollar, as well as that as well. So we'll keep an eye on that as that comes out. I'm going to leave that actually in there and come back to that in a future video, see how accurate it was. I don't like to predict prices too much for the future, but that's certainly a good earmarker for that. If adoption kicks in and they do the things that they promise to do, I don't see a reason why not. And obviously beyond that in the future. So right now, as it stands, the RSIs are showing a relatively heavy, top heavy elements. We've got 71 here on the 14-day and 58 on the 28-day. This for me is not a buying opportunity. I need to now wait for this to calm down a bit. If it flies up, brilliant. If you're a day trader or a week trader, you might have made some good money moves on that. I'm looking personally to be accumulating Casper at the lowest possible regions as and when those come in. So my next anticipation, as I said already, is going to be that 3 cent mark again and trying to retest these markers potentially at some point of these 2.5. Why? Because I don't think there's enough data points to confirm that we're ready with Casper, even for the longevity aspect, to really push ourselves higher. Because what will happen otherwise is we get all these big fluctuation moves up, we don't have any support, and then we just get the big triggers down. And that is great if you are a short-term trader, but it's perhaps something that can be a bit risky and a bit messy. I do like to see that smooth action, if you like, especially when it comes to things that I'm trying to accumulate. That might sound a bit selfish or maybe self-pointed. You guys will obviously have your own strategies and your thought process around that based on what you're trying to achieve, whether that's in the short term or the long term. In reality, to me, 3 cents to 3.5 is not that exciting unless you've got extreme, significant allocation and value already in there. Would make more sense, obviously. So Casper in general is performing very well. You see on the right hand side here, the performance indicator is 17% on the week and 5.9% up on the month. So it's not massive, but that weekly is very strong. It's had a good move in the last few days, particularly. The 6 months is in green, and so is the year to date. Now, they're not huge numbers, but they're certainly positive numbers. And I still think like we're still in this winter mode. We've still got a lot more to come. There's potential big news in March and April around energy and stuff like that. Who knows? Recession creeping in further, inflation creeping in further. We've got to keep an eye on this. But the grand scheme of things is we're kind of majority of the assets are 90 or 100% down from their original high points that we saw in that sort of October, November 2021 period, right? So you could argue that, even if it does come down, it'd probably be like a quick blast, whether it be a day or weeks momentum downwards before it pulls itself up. And then I think we can tick that box and say, right, now we need to start building this. We might see a lot of sideways movement and trading for sure, but at least we can start seeing more and more green in the performance indicator areas and start seeing a momentous movement upwards as the end of the year approaches and into the next couple of years. Because I do believe strongly that around this sort of 2024, 2025 period will be the huge hyper cycle. And I still to this day believe that it would be CBDC driven and around the adoption. As we've mentioned with this research from Casper, the full or beginning adoptions into enterprise and existing systems and frameworks in multiple companies, enterprises and organizations. So that's my 2 cents on all of that, guys. Let us know what you think below. about Casper, about the moves in the markets right now in the last couple of weeks or the last couple of days. Some interesting things occurring, but I'm looking forward to this Davos event. Maybe I'll do a live stream with you guys on YouTube as that's happening, and maybe we can do some like cool talking discussions about the points as they come out. Let us know if that's of interest to you, and we'll try and adhere to that as well. Guys, and wrapped up there. Thank you so much for watching. We've got a couple more videos, including Alliance Block and stuff to do tonight as well, and across the weekend also. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next Casper video. Bye bye.